If you are chasing yields in crypto, you will notice that most centralized platforms have some sort of trade-off. Some will require you to lock your funds, like a fixed deposit. Others will require you to hold a certain amount of tokens named after that specific platform. Others will require you to have a high minimum amount of capital in your account to even start earning interest. And some of these platforms are not very transparent because you don't even know how the yields are actually being generated and if it is done in a sustainable manner or not. One of my favorite options is Bitfinex Lending or margin funding, which is much more transparent as it works within the exchange. Stablecoin rates can go up to 16%, you can get even higher rates like 70 or 80% on some coins. There are no mandatory fixed terms in order to earn the highest rates. You can set yourself the highest period of time in days, and you are lending through a collateralized on-exchange market that's been operating since 2012. Bitfinex margin funding is a peer-to-peer market built into the exchange. You provide capital and borrowers use the funds to increase leverage. Bitfinex has high liquidity for margin trading across 200 assets, and these funding rates only exist because there's real borrowing demand. By the end of this video, you will understand how funding rates work, how to automate lending using the auto-renewal feature, and also what are the best assets to lend. Let's start with some important notes before using Bitfinex Lending. So first you need to know that if you are from the US, you won't be able to use this exchange, and there are a couple of prohibited jurisdictions that you can check here in this page. To be able to use margin funding and trading, you will need an intermediate verification status, which means that you will need to do KYC verification. They will ask you for your national ID and even a proof of residence. Before even thinking about doing lending on this platform through margin funding, I also recommend you check out the security tab, and this is where you can make sure that your account is more secure, and you can use a couple of tools for that, including email encryption, two-factor authentication. You can also set up some session settings here so that if there is a certain timeout of, for example, 30 minutes of inactivity, the account closes on your browser. You then also have the withdraw address whitelist, which I highly recommend. This means that you will only be able to withdraw from a certain address, and then you can enable and disable withdrawals for specific coins. And you also have some withdraw settings to monitor withdrawals by IP, to lock withdrawals, and so on. To start lending, you will of course need to top up your account, and then if you have your funds on a different wallet, you will need to move them around. So here you can check the wallets tab, and then down here, if you have assets available, for example US dollar or Solana, you can then here select the source wallet, which will most likely be exchange if you are sending crypto from another exchange, and then you will click on here and select the destination wallet, and then click on funding, and you will move over your funds to the funding wallet, ideally the funds that you already want to lend out. So if you have, for example, Solana here, and you want to convert that to US dollar, you will need to first use the exchange, convert it, and then you will go here and select the exchange. In this case, I have it empty already, and then move those funds over to the funding wallet and click transfer. Now let's jump into the funding tab. To do so, you will go to the bar here at any moment and click on funding. I'm already there. And this page is where you will go to check up on your loans, create new ones, monitor rates, and so on. We have some different areas to cover here, which include here this tickers bar, also the funding form, another very important aspect, which is the funding book and the auto-renew USD offers. So let's start with the funding book, since it illustrates how the funding market on Bitfinex works. The funding book is divided in two parts, which includes the bid in the left, where you will see the green color, and then the offers at the right side, right here. The bids are what traders are willing to pay and for how long, and the offers are what lenders are asking for. Then for you to start earning interest, you will need to get matched by a borrower's bid. To check the market depth, you can go and look at the total column. If there is more than $10 million in cheaper offers ahead of you, you will be waiting a while to get matched. Also, you can see here all of the data that comes associated with a loan, or in this case, a bid and an offer. So here you have a couple of metrics, which are the PER, and this is the margin funding time period in days. Essentially, it is the period in which you choose to lend out your capital, which can go from 2 to 120. Then you have the amount and also the total, which is the total amount of funding. And here you have the rate, which is the margin funding rate per day. And in Bitfinex, you will always see the rates as daily rates. So this is what you would earn per day over your capital. And then of course here on the right side, you still have the rate, the total, the amount, and again per, which is the period. Then here you can also see your offers that got matched. But if you click here, you can also see the market. So this gives you a better understanding of what type of offers are getting matched. So if you want to get a loan or an offer of yours approved fast and matched, you can go and check out here which were the last offers. Now let's jump into the tickers. This is still important as we can check out all of the assets available to lend and also what you can expect when you create a loan. So here you have the name of the asset or the ticker itself. You have FRR. You also have the APR, which is the FRR APR. So this is an APR or yield that gives you an average annual return considering the current FRR. The FRR is a flash return rate, which is a dynamic market benchmark that automatically adjusts based on the average of all active positions. So this would be perfect if you want to get some of the best rates without going there and actually choosing your rate. You also have here the 24 hours change and here the total volume. So if you always want to lend out the currency with the most liquidity, that will be USD since it has the top volume. And that is because this is the most used coin to trade on Bitfinex. So if you go to the trading section here, you will see that most volume is on USD. So you can trade BTC USD, LTC USD, Ethereum USD, and those are usually the ones that have the most volume. So when you are funding, USD is not only the one with the most liquidity, but also the safest bet, as you won't suffer from market price changes. But as you can see, there's a ton of different coins that you can lend. I usually focus on USD due to the liquidity. And then you can here pick a bunch of your favorites and then display them here. So I have USD, Euro, USDT, Atom, Algo, Xiaoti, which is a coin that tracks the gold price. You have also DOT, AVAX, FIL, APT, and SUI. And these are a couple of coins that I chose because I think they have potential, and sometimes they also have quite high APRs, which you can take advantage of when they are at the lowest point of their own price chart, as if there is little downside, you can go on and accumulate that coin. So then when there is a bull market, you will make profits from the APR and also from the price volatility or price increase. Moving on to the funding forum, this is where you can create your own offers to lend out your capital if you don't want to use any automation. The USD bid would be for essentially asking for a loan, and USD offer would be to offer a loan. If we are lending, we will use the USD offer red button. So we've already covered what the rate per day is. Here is the amount that you want to lend out in total. So you might actually get your capital split, but get the same rate. For example, if you have 1000, you might get matched for 500 and then again for 500 for pretty much the same rate. But it's just because it might be from different offers from the bid side that get matched. You can then select your period in days from 2 to 120, and you have a couple of options here when it comes to the execution of your offer. So you have here hidden, and this will essentially hide your offer from the funding book. This hidden option is quite useful if you are a whale, you have large amounts of capital, and you don't want the rest of the market to panic or change their offers all of the sudden. Then you can click on here and it will hide your offer from the funding book. However, you will pay a slightly bigger fee. Then you have the FRR, which is the flash return rate, and again this is a dynamic rate calculated as the average of all fixed rate positions weighted by their amount, and this updates every hour. So let's say you don't want to set up a rate and you want to guide yourself by a benchmark or the average of the market. You can click on FRR and this will replace the current rate by the FRR value, as you can see here on the tickers. You then also have two options which are both reliable on the FRR, which are the FRR delta variable and the FRR delta fixed. So the FRR delta variable is a dynamic rate that allows you to specify an offset to flash return rate. For example, if you set a delta of 0.001 when the FRR is 0.045, your calculated rate will be 0.046, and once matched the rate becomes static and will not update against FRR anymore. So what that means is that this will get adjusted by the variable you set on the fund book until you get matched. So if you select that here, it will be based on the FRR, and then you can here set your delta variable or your FRR offset. So the delta variable is tied to the current FRR. If the current FRR changes, then the value you set for the delta variable will be applied to the new FRR until the offer gets matched. And in the fixed one, the FRR used is going to be the FRR that you used at the moment when you created the USD or the coin offer. Then if you want to select your amount and you want to create a loan for all of your assets at once, for example, if you want to lock a specific rate at 120 days, you can click on here and it will offer all your current available USD. After selecting all of those options, you can go here and see offer, and this is the lowest offer. And here on bid, this is the highest offer, and you can see how your current rate is comparing to that offer. Again, focusing on offer because we are lending out capital, we are not borrowing. In this section of balances, you can check your current balance. Here you have the balance available on the exchange, in this case 0, and it's all USD because that's what we have in the funding. Then you have margin here if you are using margin, and again, in our use case, we won't be using margin at all. And then we have funding, and this is where your funds reside for lending. Below those funds, you will see 1.99. This is the interest earned to this moment, and also the funds that you have available that were not lent out. Down here, you can also see a summary. This will show you the USD provided, so the total amount that you've provided for loans. Then you can see your effective rate yield. So this is an average of all of your loans. And then you can see also an effective period duration, which is again an average of your period for the loans. Here in the chart, you can take a look at how the rates are moving. Sometimes there's huge spikes. So if you set a loan based on FRR, you might catch those spikes as that range changes per hour. But most of the time you can see, in this case for USD, an average of 0.05 or even 0.04. I usually don't touch that as my goal is to lend out automatically, no matter what happens, as long as my target rate is met. Here you have the provided, which shows all of my loans. So here you can see all is in USD. Hidden does not apply to me as I've not started any hidden order. And you have the amount, the rate, and when the offer expires. To make it clear, this period is not mandatory, so if the person who lent out your funds to trade with margin wants to pay earlier before this date expires, then they can do so. Or of course they can use the max amount of days and then pay at the last day. However, if there is any default or something like that, you don't get the same risk as on other products, as in this case Bitfinex manages the funds so they can liquidate traders to then pay you your interest, or if there's a case where they can't pay, then they have a fund to pay this out. So you will never be losing on both your interest and your initial capital amount. Here on bids and offers, this is where you will check out your current bids or offers that you've set using the funding form. If they are not matched yet, when they are matched, they will go to the provided, as you are lending out funds and you have some active loans. Now, this is how I usually lend out my capital. I don't use the funding form at all. I just go here into the auto renew USD offers, and this will change of course based on your coin, and I just set here the parameters that I want. Currently it is at USD at FRR percentage, max 2 days, but that's because I've already locked in interest, so this would be around 8%. So what I have is locked around at 8% per year, which for me is good enough compared with other platforms, but later in the future I will be aiming for 10%, and as you can see here, my latest loan is already at 0.032. And if you want to calculate this to know how much you will earn per month or at the end of the duration of your loan, I will also leave the formulas in the description. Now let's deactivate this to check out what options we have for the auto renew. So the auto renew USD offers and loans here as a button so that you can understand how it works. So this is to ensure that you always offer the available funds in your funding wallet so that you keep earning interest, and it will automatically offer available funds in your funding wallet in the following cases. So if the funding interest accumulates, if the funding term expires and funds are returned, if the borrower releases funds before the expiration date, or if the additional funds are deposited to your funding wallet. It is pretty cool because this will work like some other apps that offer interest rates like Nexo and so on, except here on Bitfinex it's much more transparent, as you can see what's happening in the market. So you get better rates by people who want to borrow funds and that compete with each other, while on other platforms that are centralized you have more of a black box model where you can see what interest you will earn per year, but you don't know how the interest is being generated, and then they have sometimes some ridiculous minimum to start earning interest, while here the minimum amount to automatically trigger an offer is a funding wallet balance of an equivalent to $150. So not that huge. And then this covers how to activate the auto renewing, which we are going to talk about now. So we have the max amount. This is the amount that you want to lend out. If you set this at 0, it will lend out all capital available on your funding wallet, which is usually what I set it for. And then here you can select the period of days. So if you want to lend your capital and you want to take advantage of floating rates in the market, for example, for other coins that usually have a lot of fluctuations, then you can use that. Here I am on the USD. So usually with USD, my goal is to lock in a bigger period because I want to lend out passively. I don't want to check the platform every single day. So I usually set this at 120, and then I want to get a specific rate. I usually want to get 7% up to the max available. So currently you can see here the APR is 16%. So you could also get that. But again, if you want to be more passive, you would just set your goal or your desired rate here manually, and then you would click activate. For now, I'm going to leave this at FFR and minimum 2 days because I have some current loans and I don't have currently more capital to loan available on my funding wallet. And then you click activate, and that's it. This is the simplest way to lend out your capital. If you have funds available on your wallet, with this option, all of the funds will be used and lend out. And if you add more funds to your funding wallet, they will again be using the auto renew feature and lend that capital again. So if you deposit funds on your wallet, just like I've showed you earlier, where you deposit to your exchange wallet and then you convert your funds to your desired coin, for example USD. Once you convert your funds, an offer will be created here and then you will get a new loan, as long as you have a minimum of $150 to guarantee that you have pretty good liquidity and that at least you get matched when it comes to the amount. If you want to track earnings from your loans, but you don't want to always be entering the Bitfinex exchange, then you can use the reports dashboard. Just head over to this avatar or profile icon and then click on reports, and this will open up the report section, and then you can head over to funding here, click funding, and here you can see all of your funding orders. So here you have the currency, the amount, the executed amount, the type, the rate, and also the period and the date. So this data is for bids and offers, but if you want to see the current loans, you can go here and then you will have the amounts provided. So for this date range, we have two provided, one of 284 and another for 252, closed and used. And we have here the rate, the period, when it was opened, when it's going to be closed or was closed, and also here the date. When it comes to real earnings or returns from your loans, you will always want to have a couple of metrics in mind so that you know exactly how much you are earning in practical terms. For the loans, we also need to be aware of fees. So for normal orders, Bitfinex will charge 15% over your loan profits and 18% if you choose to open an hidden order. Let's now start with the principal. So here you can put your principal amount or the money in dollars that you used for a loan or multiple loans, as long as they have the same daily rate and period. Otherwise, you can just fill in the gaps and go ahead and set here multiple loans. Then you have here the daily rate, which is the interest paid every single day. Then you have the period of your loan, in this case 120 days. Then you have the tax rate, which will be different for different countries, and I have set 25% as an example. Then you have the inflation rates, which you can use. You can either go and search for current inflation, which usually is a projection, or the past year. Here again, this is for hidden orders, so you just need to put in a N or a Y if you use the hidden orders. Then you have here the period of loan return, so this is the net profit for the duration of your loan. If it's 120 days, then this is what you will earn after 120 days. Then there is the annual returns APY, so this is the rate that you would earn per year, assuming that you keep a loan for that amount of time, or that you either renew a loan or create a new one to keep earning interest for the remaining days of that year. You also can see here the real APY, which is the percentage that you earn after tax and inflation. So you are already subtracting the tax rate and the inflation percentage. And then here you can see the 1 year net profit, which is nominal. So this is what you earn in an entire year, assuming that you keep lending. And then you also have 1 year real net profit, which is the profit for 1 year after tax and inflation. So these are the real metrics that you need to know, especially how much you get in money liquid after discounting all of the fees, inflation, and also the tax rate. And you want to know this for every single loan or investment that you've made, not just from Bitfinex. So now that we've covered how to set up your funding account and start lending, you can go ahead and check the bids in the funding book, create your first offer, or use the auto renew feature to start lending your capital. This, however, does not need to be your only source of income when it comes to crypto yields. You can go ahead and explore DeFi alternatives as well, and for that you can check my video on DeFi Lemma. You can start with a small amount or allocate different amounts of capital for different platforms like Bitfinex, like DeFi Lending, liquidity pools, and so on. If you want to sign up for Bitfinex, you can check the link down in the description, and you can also get my lending sheet for calculating real yields after subtracting taxes and also any fees, whether that's on DeFi, on Bitfinex, or on other CeFi platforms. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.